Hello everybody, National Master Jesse Cohen here from School of Chess. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to solve puzzles. You all really seem to like solving puzzles. I think you understand that solving puzzles is the fast way to get better at chess. But how do we solve these puzzles is, a really important question. So let's just talk about it, okay? So we're just going to start at the very beginning. So we are on Puzzle Rush, which is a feature on chess.com, and I'm on survival mode right now. And what this is going to do is it's going to feed us chess problems that start off very easy and progressively get harder. That's the idea. And if we get 3 incorrect, then we lose. It's that simple. And what I want to do is I want to guide you all. It's a little bit louder than I want it to be. I want to guide you all through how I solve these so that you can solve these better on your own. And the reason for all of this is so that we can become better chess players. Because when you start finding moves like this in your own game, you're going to start winning a lot more pieces. You're going to start checkmating a lot more often. So, okay, let's just start with like the basics, okay? There are 2 sets of 3s I need you to pay attention to, and don't confuse them, okay? When I am looking to find the right move, I am looking at checks, captures, and threats. Moves that attack the king, moves that take pieces, and moves that make threats. So either I attack your king, I take your piece, or maybe I threaten you. Maybe I threaten to take your pawn, or I threaten to checkmate you, something like that, okay? But there are also 3 clues that you have to watch out for as well. And those are piece safety, king safety, and lineups, okay? Don't worry about trying to digest all this at the same time. I'm just going to kind of work through these problems and explain how the different clues and checks, captures, and threats are popping up, okay? So, in this position, looking at checks, do we have any checks in this position? No. There are no checks at all. There's no way that we can attack White's king. Do we have any... Hey, what's up, Blue Elves? Yeah, this is survival. We're just kind of starting from the ground up and just kind of how to explain how these puzzles are solved as they become, more advanced. So we have no checks in this position. We do have 1 capture, and that is knight takes knight. And this should be pretty appealing because if we take a close look, nothing can take us back. But we have to take a big look at this position. It's really important to notice the long-range pieces, okay? Beginners, I'm talking to you. You have a really, really difficult time seeing the long-range power of the certain pieces, like the rooks, the bishops, and the queens. And so you might not see that when you take this knight, that it opens up the pathway from the white rook to the black rook. And you've got to know that if they come down here and take your rook, that you can take back and that you're going to be okay. And so in this sense, we capture, they capture with check, and we capture back. Again, checks, captures, and threats, but mostly checks, right? This is going to net us a piece. Take. Wait. I'm confused. No. Did I explain it for nothing? Did I choose the wrong one? Okay, I have no idea. That's still... I guess it doesn't count for our score, but I guess somehow we have to start over. Okay, again, checks, capture, and threats, mostly checks. Are there any checks in this position? There's only 1, and it's also a capture. Queen takes rook, check, it attacks the king. After this move, what can black play? The only move in the position is to take us back. Now, most of us would stop here because we've just lost a queen, but we've got to be curious. As long as there's more checks, capture, and threats to give, maybe we should keep looking just to see what happens. Do we have any follow-up checks? We do. We have this rook behind here that takes on e8 and gives another check. But this time, there's nothing for black to take back, so it's just a loss. After queen takes rook check, check and capture, black rook takes back, and this black rook takes again on e8, and it's just a back rank checkmate. So, we can seal that deal right there. Boom, boom, boom. No problem, right? All right, checks, captures, and threats. Take a second. We're black. Does black have any checks in this position? The answer is yes, there is 1. Rook down here to c1, check, attacking white's king. Can white take it? No. Can white block it? Yes. White could block it by putting their rook in between. But do you see that we can just take their rook with our rook now, and now white cannot take back. And this would be checkmate, a back rank checkmate, the second most common checkmate in chess. Second after queen and helper, sometimes called kiss death checkmate. By the way, there's no other way for the king to run because that king is trapped on the back row, so this check does lead to checkmate. Again, checks, captures, and threats, but mostly checks. That was a check followed by a check and a capture. Okay? They are attacking our queen. Do we have any checks, captures, or threats in this position, but mostly checks? Yeah, we have 2 checks in this position, right? We have queen captures, rook check, and we have rook to h8 check. Perhaps one of these will lead us to victory. Maybe we look at the most powerful queen first. If we play queen takes rook check, and they play king takes back, that is the most likely move, right? Do we have a good follow-up move, check, capture, threat? No, we have no check at all. And we have just sacrificed a queen, which is 9 points for the rook, which is 5 points, so this is not desirable. What about the other check? If we give this check, can black take it? No. Can black run away from it? No, the king is actually trapped on the back row. Can black block it? If this bishop blocks our rook when it comes down, we take that for free, and the check continues. If they block with this rook down here, we can also take this rook, and this is also check. And there's no way to take that back either. Notice that this is not a possible move. This looks like it might save black, but if it wasn't for the white queen giving an absolute pin to that rook is not allowed to make this block. So after this check, this will lead to another back rank checkmate. Listen, as I explain these, something else you kind of want to keep in mind is this. A big part about being a chess player that makes us good is pattern recognition, seeing certain types of patterns. And if you read a lot of chess books, you're going to start to find that the patterns are talked about a lot. And one of those patterns is this back rank checkmate. Again, that's when the king gets trapped on the back row and we can shoot up there with a queen or a rook. It's not always checkmate, but when you start to notice that, you should be definitely looking for some type of way to give a checkmate. This check, again, they can block with the bishop. We take this for free, and they block here, and again, we take this for free, and they can't block back anymore. Okay? Checks, captures, and threats. Checks, captures, and threats. You know, I did not orchestrate this. This is completely randomly generated. But again, is this not just another back rank checkmate? Here we have a king trapped on the back rank, meaning he cannot run off it because of his own pieces or whatever is keeping him on there. We have one check in this position. We can play rook captures there, rook check, attacking the king. The only white move is to capture us back. And then we have its brother rook on e7. We take on e1 again. We take the other rook, and this time it is another back rank checkmate. There's nothing to take back. The king is still trapped on the back row. This is over. Okay, now this is a total change of pace, so bear with me. Sometimes you're going to get to the end game, which if you are a newer player, you're not going to see this happen very much. Or if you do see this happen, it's going to be typically one of two things. Either one side has a bunch of pieces and you have nothing, or you have a bunch of pieces and they have nothing. But as you become more advanced, you're going to have more chess games where you have very few pieces for both sides and things are about even. And we call this the end game. Now, sometimes checkmates and winning pieces and things like we're finding in the other problems can happen in these, but very often end games just come down to one thing. Who can make a pawn into a queen faster? It's that simple, okay? And so remember, we make a pawn when we get another, we make a queen, we make a pawn to the other side, and so we have 3 pawns. And they have 5 pawns, so that's not very good, right? Oh, Yeet Master. The NM stands for National Master. It's a title given out by the United States Chess Federation. Yeah, it's not like there's like different ranking systems out there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with any. The main one is FIDE, F-I-D-E, the world ranking system. That's when you see titles like FM, FIDE Master, IM, International Master, and GM Grandmaster. Yeah, it's cool. It's not a Grandmaster title by any means, but it means I know something about chess. So anyway, yeah, I mean, this is all about who can make a pawn into a queen first. And these pawns we have are the closest. But, you know, if we push this, we're just blocked by their pawn. So maybe we try this one. So let's just see, how many moves would it take us to make a queen? If we push here, that's 1. They can take us. We can take back. That's 2. And then we would push for 3, push for 4, and push for 5. And hey, look, it's even with check on that queen. How many moves would it take for black to make it? Well, these are white's most advanced pawns. And so if they push here, we take. That's take back. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. So actually, it's the same number, except that we got to go first in this sequence. So it'll go, we play our 5th move here, make a queen check, while their pawn is still on b7. So actually we make our queen first, and maybe if we play our cards right, we can stop white from making a queen completely. I don't know what that is. That is not the fastest way. I don't think. Yeah, it didn't seem any faster. Quite? Yeah. Nah. Alright, again, how do we solve these problems? Checks, captures, and threats, but mostly checks. There are a few checks we can give in this position, right? There is queen to e2 check, attacking the white king. And there is queen to taking the pawn check, attacking the white king. Now, at first, I probably won't want to look at that one because it appears that white just takes me back, and I'm down a queen. And I only have a couple follow-up checks with my rooks, but those are both unsafe. So that doesn't seem good at all. But what about this check? If I give this check, the king cannot take me if I notice the long-range helper down there with the rook. That means that the king will have to go back here. Now, remember what I was talking about earlier? The whole pattern recognition? Don't you see what this is? This is another back rank checkmate. The king is now trapped on the back row, and we can now shoot our queen down to the back row check, sacrificing her. You know I don't want to sacrifice my queen, but if it's checkmate, I'm going to do it. And so after that, rook take it. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to play rook e2, queen e2 check. The king will have to go back here. Now he's trapped behind his own pawns, trapped on the back rank. We shoot our queen up, check. The rook takes us on e1, and then we follow it up with rook takes down there on e1, back rank checkmate, right? Right? So check, only move, check, only move, and check capture, checkmate. Again, checks, captures, and threats, but mostly checks. Most of the time when you're solving these puzzles, the correct move is going to attack the king. And if it's not that, it's going to capture a piece. If it's not that, it's going to make an attack. And once in like 100 puzzles, it'll be some quiet little move. And for that, I'm sorry, that takes a deeper understanding of chess. Again, this one is super easy. If you're looking at checks, captures, and threats, if the first thing you're doing in every single position is looking, can I attack my opponent's king? Then this is an easy problem. There's only one way for us to attack white's king, right? Queen takes h2. And we can see pretty quickly, can white take us? No, we have a helper on d6. Our bishop helps out. Can they block or run away? No, this is just so for all those ones we just saw about the back rank, this right here is the #1 checkmate. Burn this image into your brain. If you are a newer player checking this out for whatever reason, burn this image into your brain. queen and helper checkmate, or what I prefer to call it, kiss of death checkmate, is the #1 way to checkmate anyone. You memorize this checkmate, you're going to win a lot of chess games. The king is on the edge. The queen goes basically right in front of his face. And as long as she has a helper, it should basically always be checkmate, right? All right. So there's a lot going on in this position. Of course, as always, the first thing we should be looking is checks. However, I do want to take a quick note of the position and what's going on, right? I should have good awareness. At the moment, I can see that they have a queen, because we're black. White has a queen. We don't. We have this rook, though. And it looks like they've just played this move. Maybe they're looking to make a pawn into a queen. But it seems that we have a pawn as well, and we also can make it into a queen. If we played this move rook check, then they can just take us for free. Same thing if we play rook captures h3 check. It is good for us to make a practice of looking at these moves just in case, okay? Do not get in the habit of dismissing a move just because it looks bad. There will be many times that you sacrifice a piece and you will have to be curious enough to look past it. Do I have a follow-up check, capture, or threat that will win the game after my sacrifice? But in this case, there just is none, okay? On top of that, this is the only capture. Rook takes bishop, okay? That doesn't make, you know, too much of an impression either, okay? And on top of that, if you're really, really paying attention, white is threatening to take our pawn, the pawn that could become a queen. And it would be check on our king. So that's a problem, and making a queen is a problem too. And they're already up a queen. Like, this is bad, okay? So I'm thinking something different here. And kind of, you know, this is kind of an endgame too, so, you know, keep that in mind as well. What if we just try to make a queen first? If we make a queen, this does actually make a threat. If you can really imagine that queen on a1, do you see, if we had another move, what move we could play? We could make that queen go all the way down to g1 with checkmate guarded by the rook. So if we play that queen, they don't have time to make another queen because we will checkmate. Also, if we make this into a queen, notice that white has no way to attack our king that is safe. The only way is queen here, which allows us to take for free, or queen here, which also will allow our new queen to take for free. So it just seems like this is the right way to play, right? Sacrificing the queen. Now, they can make another queen with check. This is true. And the only move is here. There's no good follow-up, though. Okay. Wow. I'm actually surprised that it's giving us this hard of problems. Okay, so once again, something I should tell you is that if you are watching this and you have an honest desire to become a strong chess player and do it as fast as possible, then you should try to solve lots of puzzles. You should try to do like 15, 30 minutes of puzzles a day. But I'll tell you the secret. These puzzles are not the best. Because sometimes you will get a puzzle that is just, it doesn't make sense. It's way too hard for what you're doing. Or way too easy. It's not really challenging. Okay? Oftentimes an author with a book is going to give you a better outcome because they have seen it in advance and they've made sure to make it in a good order. My favorite book is The Manual of Chess Combinations. I definitely recommend checking it out. In this position, we only have one check. And we got to be careful here because black has a queen and we don't. Okay? The only check in the position is knight to f6 check. Okay? Now, black has two options, or I guess, well, black has a few options, but black could take our knight with the queen. But if that queen takes the knight, we can play rook takes their rook check. Try to follow me on this one. I don't know why it's giving us this hard of a problem this early. However, try to follow me as best you can. Ross Belesman chess? What's up, man? I don't know if I said that even close to correct, but welcome to the channel, man. Again, we're just trying to explain puzzles from the very beginning to all the way up through mastery and try to explain how we're thinking about this, looking for the checks, the captures, the threats, looking for the clues, looking for the patterns. In this position, again, the only check is knight here check, which attacks the king and the rook at the same time. If the queen takes that knight for free, which would be tempting, we can then play our rook, takes their rook up on d8 or an e8 check. The only move at that point for black would be king down to g7. And normally at this point, I would reject the variation because black has a queen and we only have a king and a rook and a bishop. However, I always encourage you to look one move farther than you think you should. Notice what's just happened. The black king and the black queen have both lined up on the same dark square diagonal. And with our rook on e8, we can play bishop to e5, pinning the queen to the king, which will force a trade-off of our bishop for their queen, meaning that at the end, we will have a rook versus just some pawns. Easy win. That's variation number 1. Sorry. After knight f6 check, this is something else. If you want to become a better chess player, you're going to have to be patient. When you see something that works, you're going to get so excited. I know. I get so excited too, and I just want to play it. But at the same time, I know as I get stronger that there starts to become defenses. And if I get so excited because I see one time where it works really nicely and I don't go back and say, is there anything else they could try? Then I'm doing myself a disservice, okay? Because let's just face it. If I was playing you a game of chess right now and I played knight f6 check against you and you saw what I just showed you, that you were going to lose your queen and it was just going to be rook versus your pawns and you're just going to die, don't you think you'd go back and look for something else? I bet you would. I bet you would. After knight f6 check, black could try king g7. But then if nothing else, I can play knight takes rook check. And then I have a knight, a bishop, and a rook. Combined total of 11 points for the queen. Now I'm happy. And I'll just say this. If the king goes either of these places, I can play both knight or rook takes that rook. And again, same thing. I will be up in points. See, this is pretty complicated for the 8th problem, but again, I want you to see checks, captures, and threats. And also very, very important is, remember, if you were listening from before, I said the 3 major clues are piece safety, king safety, and lineups. Lineups happen when either very important pieces get on the same lineup. For example, the king and the queen getting on the same diagonal lineup when I have a dark square diagonal moving piece nearby. Okay? So, what did our opponent's last move just do? It's threatening my queen. Okay, something to keep in mind. Do we have any checks in this position? Nope, no way to attack black's king. Do any captures? Yeah, we have some captures. I could play rook takes queen and lose my queen. Do I have any good checks, capture, threats to follow that up? That are worth losing a queen for? No. Okay, I could play rook takes. If I play rook takes and they play pawn takes, the most logical move for me would be to play queen takes. And then I'm threatening that rook over here in the corner. Can black deal with that threat? I think black can deal with that threat. If black moves this knight, for example, it would open up the queen to defend the rook. Do I have any other continuation, checks, capture, threats after all of that to justify this? I can see some checks. I see a check that sacrifices my queen on g6, but it's not worth it. I see... Oh, I see we can attack the e6 pawn. I see some attacks, but is it really worth the sack? I'm not convinced necessarily. I'm not convinced. I mean, obviously pawn takes pawn loses the queen, so I don't think that's even worthy of consideration because I see no good follow-up. I'm going to tell you all the truth right now. I really want to play this move. I really want to play this move. And I wish I had a good explanation as to why. Like, from a tactical point of view. Because typically, solving puzzles is for either winning points, you're either winning a piece, something, or you're checkmating. But after rook takes bishop, pawn takes back, queen takes, attacking the rook, and let's say like knight to d7, for example. I could play queen c6 attacking e6. And there's not even a really good way to guard it. And there are, like, I would get a knight and 2 pawns for the rook. And if you really think about it, after the e6 pawn falls, my e5 pawn is a passed pawn. And I have a lot of, like, I don't know. I suddenly dominate the center. I don't know. I really like it. I personally like it. Even if I didn't like that variation, after pawn takes and queen takes and maybe knight d7, I also maybe have d5, rolling my center pawns. From a positional standpoint, I actually really like that. I don't know. I wish I had a better way to describe it. I could even be getting this problem wrong. It's an easier problem. You would think it's just winning a piece or something. But I see no other... There's no checks. I see no other good captures. Our queen is in danger. I mean, the only other squares we can move her are here. I mean, like, what does this do? I'm convinced this is right. It doesn't make us explain it. Sometimes it doesn't make you. I don't know if I agree with that level, with that thinking, but okay. So, we are in an endgame. We're in an endgame because there's only a few pieces. So, the number one thing we're thinking about is, can anybody make queens before the other side? That was a bad puzzle? Yeah, it kind of was. It kind of was. It was, in terms of teaching, like, on a advanced positional level, I agree with that problem because, again, I see the potential of my future positions. But for that being supposed to be something a 600 understands, a 600 is just trying to keep their pieces safe and have some decent strategy. You know what I mean? This is, again, why I encourage so much, look at the books. Again, I'll just, little secret. If I go here and I go in Google and I search in Manual of Chess Combinations 1A PDF, this is the first one, I can find PDF copies that will let me, do this. Again, I'm not a big fan of taking content that is not being paid for. However, if you want to give it a look-see and decide, is it worth my money before you buy it, I think it's definitely a good thing to look at. Oh yeah, in this position, this bishop definitely seems a bit trapped, doesn't it? So again, in this endgame, the number one thing I'm thinking about most of the time is who can make pawns into queens first. I have some checks here with bishop here and here. This one seems ridiculous. The fact that our pawn, white has this pawn here, we can just take it for free, and it's like 2 moves away from becoming a queen otherwise, it's extremely tempting to just take that pawn. And then, I'll be completely honest, again, this isn't so much of a tactic, in my opinion. You just kind of have to see in advance. Endgames, in my opinion, are a really, really great place to train because, on one hand, they have very few pieces on the board, so you don't have to consider too many things. You don't have to be like, oh, there's so many pieces and so much going on, what's really important? You kind of know what's important. There's the bishops and the pawns, that's what's important. And you also know what the objectives are, make pawns into queens. But the hard part with endgames is sometimes you have to look ahead quite a few moves. After we take this pawn on a6, even though it's only just one pawn, I see this bishop next move coming to f1, which will attack the g2 pawn. And I see no way within the next 2 moves, even with white's bishop as a light square bishop, I see no way for it to defend the g2 pawn. And when this pawn falls, this pawn is going to become a pawn that can push to the other side and actually become a queen. Obviously, if I push it right now, it's just going to die. So again, this might seem very slow, but this will win the game. All right, we've got an endgame. Or sorry, not an endgame. We've got not an endgame. Okay, clues. It should jump out at you like crazy. If you're an experienced chess player, you should absolutely notice that this king looks ridiculous for a couple of reasons. Even though he's castled, his pawn shield is down to 1. Remember, the pawns in front of the castled king are his #1 safety net. When they're down to 1, he's not doing too great. On top of that, there are 3 pieces aiming at that pawn, okay? In fact, there's 3 attackers and only 1 defender. Black can immediately crash through, but it kind of is important to see which is the right way to crash through. A lot of people might just assume, well, let's crashing with the queen first, she's the most powerful piece, or let's crashing with the rook first, because that way, you know, the queen won't be in any danger if we have to sacrifice or something like that. But again, this has got to come down to calculation, okay? If we play queen takes pawn check, white can't take it. White can't block it. White can run. White can play king to h1 in the corner or king to f1 over here. If queen takes g3 check and this king goes to h1, do you see the checkmate? Do you see the queen and helper checkmate? The most common checkmate in chess? Just queen up 1 square. Guarded by the rook. Queen and helper checkmate. Game over. If he goes over to f1, do we have any follow-up checks? Well, yeah, we do. We have quite a few checks. But again, something I'll encourage you to do, again, is especially these manual combinations, because it's going to have you do a lot of checkmate problems. Something you might be wondering at the moment is, Jesse, there's a lot of checks after, like, you know, after here and here. How am I supposed to know which check to go for? Now, in this case, I just chose to look at the queen going forward first. I could have looked at the rook as well. It just so happens I looked at the queen. And then something else to think about as well is you have to really think about where the king can run to. After queen takes g3 and the king goes to f1, the only safe square for that king, if you really pay attention, the queen's covering all these squares, okay? The only safe square for him is here. So, if we can attack the square he's standing on, which is going to be f1, and the square he can run to, it'll be checkmate, right? Queen takes g3 check, a capture and a check. King f1, same thing. Queen to g2 checkmate, covering the king, covering all of his runaway squares, guarded by the rook. It's game over. Looks like they went for the other variation, okay? So again, it doesn't have to be terribly complicated, okay? Now, this one is 2 things. This is both knowing to look for checks, captures, and threats, but mostly checks, but it's also about knowing the dangers of moving your f-pawn, okay? You had better be an experienced chess player and know what you're doing before you move your f-pawn early in a chess game, otherwise you might have terrible, terrible consequences. When you move that f-pawn, you open up that diagonal to the king. It's not always going to kill you, but it might. We have 1 check in this position. It's queen to h5 check. Black has no way to take us. Black has 2 options. Run with the king to d8 or e7, or to block with the pawn. Let's eliminate some early options. After queen h5 check, if king d8, can you stop and find a good follow-up check that's going to really ruin Black's day? Take a second. There's lots of checks in this position, right? Who sees it? Who? You know what? I'm just going to talk to you guys. I'm not going to pretend you're not there. Who sees it? Where's the follow-up after king d8? I can't tell if you're all typing. Alright, I'm not going to assume anymore. If you play queen h5 check, and that king goes over to d8, we have knight to f7 check. the knight will attack black's king, black's queen, and black's rook at the same time. There goes the queen. Game over. If queen to h5 check and king to e7, this one's a little bit tougher. I'm not 100% sure if I'm sold on what I think the right answer is. Part of me wants to play queen to f7 check, king d8. It seems pretty appealing. Another part of me just thinks, why don't we just play knight f7, forking the queen and rook again? I'm not 100% sure on that one. I think it actually might be one of the more interesting variations. The other variation is to play pawn g6, and you're probably thinking to yourself, Jesse, why didn't we look at this from the beginning? If pawn g6, do you see a good check capture threat follow-up? Knight takes pawn. If black's pawn takes back, you could, if you want to get a bit wild, you could take again on g6 and check the black king, but it's simple enough. If you play queen h5 check and they play pawn g6 and we take it and they play pawn takes back, take that rook in the corner. Now look at me. There's no name for this pattern, but I promise you, if you play a bunch of chess, you will see this happen. You will have a knight in the middle, and they'll attack it with their f-pawn, and your queen will slide over for that check, and it's going to ruin their life. Watch what happens. Boom. Boom. And boom. All right. We've gone through quite a few problems. Let me see. How are we doing for time here? Not bad. Not bad. Yeah, I don't know. I'll keep going through these. I think I'll do this in like on a series. This is kind of the first intro part, and I'll do like each day, and we'll get more and more advanced. But yeah, again, why am I having you do these? Puzzles are the fastest way to get better at chess. I promise you. If you only have 15 minutes a day or whatever, and you just want to get better at chess the fastest, find an app. Put it on your phone, put it on your tablet, whatever. Find a chess book, that's the best way. And do some puzzles, okay? It's gonna be the fastest way for you to get better at chess. I promise you, I promise you. It's the #1 best thing you can do for your day when it comes to chess, okay? With that being said, think about checks, captures, and threats. Remember, look for those pieces that aren't guarded. Look for those kings that aren't protected well. Look for those important lineups. And win yourself a piece, get yourself a checkmate, win yourself a chess game. I'm National Master Jesse Cohen, Summer School of Chess. I will catch you soon. Later, later, later.